It's time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week, and we are starting here in Nigeria. President Bola Tinubu this week dispatched a delegation to Ogbomosho in Oyo State following the abduction of pupils and teachers from schools in Esiele and Yawota communities in Orire local government area. The delegation was led by Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, and also included National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribadu, Inspector General of Police Tunde Disu, Chief of Defense Staff Christopher Musa, Minister of Power Joseph Tegbe, and the President's Special Advisor on Public Communications Sunday Dari. As part of immediate measures to strengthen security in the area, the President also approved the recruitment of 1,000 forest guards in Oyo State in collaboration with the state government. Well, that's a very important story there. And also importantly, in the House of Representatives this week, we had a moment of silence for the teacher who lost his life. And we had a very heated debate on the floor of the House of Representatives as Honorable Olamijuwon Alao-Kala moved a motion of urgent national importance on the need for a military forwarding base in Orire local government area and a need to protect the students in this area. Now, very importantly here, we're seeing a conversation around state police because that's a conversation we were also having on the floor of the House. I, for one, think that when we are having a conversation around state police, we must think about some of the positives and some of the negatives. I think the most positive thing I've seen out of this is recruitment of forest guards, the 1,000 forest guards. And I think we need to be more proactive when it comes to security instead of reacting to bad things that have already happened. If we look at the Kainji Forest, which is where, the Kainji Forest also touches this area, Orire local government area. Kainji Forest is where the attacks were launched for when we saw the attacks in Borgu. Tinubu, the Jagaban of Borgu, when the attacks were launched in Borgu, it was through the Borgu Game Reserve, which is part of the Kainji National Forest. When we saw the attacks in Kwara, the attacks in the Woro community, we also saw that happened through the Kainji National Forest. When we see the attacks now in Ogbomosho area, first people who were attacked were the National Guards, and now we're seeing students being kidnapped and taken into this same forest. So forest guards are definitely necessary. They're needed. They know the terrain and should know the terrain, possibly more than our police or other security forces. And over again, we've been told over the years that our forests have become terrorist enclaves. That is where they hide out. We've had politicians say, all sorts of things about how we should go into the forest and rout them out. But it's very important because Kainji, of course, connects the northwest to the southwest. And so that is a very important forest. And the recruitment of forest guards, I think, is the most important thing that we're seeing coming out of this. But it's very unfortunate that this is happening after the children have been kidnapped. This is happening when the children are still being held. We're also told that the children from Borno are still being held in the forest, and we're told that because of the rough terrain and maybe lack of knowledge about the terrain, we have not yet brought our children home.
I think it's important to also look at the fact that this state police conversation has been on for a while. When they say they've deployed 1,000 forest guards, they haven't specifically said what they are and who they are. Like, what are they going to be called? Is this a new unit? Is this just, are they being paid? Have they been trained? Are they being integrated into a state police system or the police or the DSS? What exactly are they? What backing do they have? What support and infrastructure are they going to be going in there with? It's important to clarify that. The argument against state police has always been it being used as a tool for people in power against their own opponents. And the arguments for basically speak about how these people know the terrain better than anybody else. So they are in the best position to protect their own people. I think the key conversation here is whether state police or not, is this going to safeguard the people? Are the people going to be safe? Is this going to become a system where people can finally go to bed at night knowing that if their kids go to school, they're going to come home safe? I think that is the most important conversation that needs to be had. Sending 1,000 people into the forest, of course, it is commendable, but I think part of the conversation was on the constitution amendment for the state police. So at this point, it is still in debate as to whether or not it is a necessity. I think the people want to be safe, and whatever is going to make that happen as soon as possible. We don't need to wait for an emergency before we begin to figure these things out. We need to separate politics from security and securing the lives of people. This is a very tense moment for Nigeria as we build up into the political season. And of course, there's a lot of I would say, excitement around that space. But the thing is, the people, do we really think that the people of Oyo State right now, as scared as they are going to go out and get their PVCs and vote? Will they even feel safe to go out and vote? These are the real issues. So I feel like we need to separate the politics from the security. The people want to be safeguarded, and whatever is going to make that happen within their control must be paramount at this time.
All right, very well said. A few points from me. I think essentially better late, than never is how I would describe, the delegation that the president has sent to Oyo State, particularly to Orire local government in the Bomosho area, like a fact-finding mission on the one hand, and also to represent the president in commiserating with the families of those whose pupils, whose loved ones are still in captivity. But there are a few issues that I see there, and I get the point that you both have made regarding the forest guard, the necessity of it, and of course, how that ties to the old question of state police. Kachi raised an important question. It's easy to announce 1,000 forest guards, but then how? Beyond what you have announced on paper, where will they be? When will you recruit them? Is there a pool already nationally? Because we know that 2 years ago, the president also made that announcement that there will be forest guard who will be deployed in the fight against terrorism. So we will need to know, but who will inform Nigerians as to how forest guards are presently working, and how will they work when they get to Oyo State, for example? Will 1,000 do the job, given what Adesua, has told us about the forest and the intricacies of that topography, that is involved? I noticed that the new gentleman, General Famadewa, that was announced the other time as the special advisor to the president on Homeland Security, was not part of that delegation. I saw that Special Advisor on Communications and former Minister Sunday Dari, who's from Oyo State, who's from Ogbomoso, was part of the delegation, which explains the fact that, okay, this is somebody from that part of the country. But then has General Famadewa assumed his position, because the NSA was there, the Inspector General of Police was there, the Defense Minister, was also there. What is happening to the fellow who was announced as Special Advisor on Homeland Security? What will he do? What has he been doing, for example? The other part that I also noticed is the fact that there was no connection whatsoever with the Oyo State government by the delegation sent by the president. And I think that if it is politics that was behind that omission, I think that it needs to be corrected. You can't have a federal government delegation go to a place like that, where people are scared, where people are disappointed, where people are still mourning the gentleman who was beheaded. What about the governor of the state? Is he no longer the chief security officer of a state? Does he have to do with anything? Does he have anything to do with the fact that he's not an APC governor? And therefore, there is a kind of a political disconnect between the federal and the state. I think that is not good for the sort of mission that the federal government is trying to carry out there. Work with Seyi Makinde to find a lasting solution to what has happened, so that we do not have a repeat of the sort of disconnect that former President Goodluck Jonathan had with the man who is now the vice president, Kashim Shettima, when he was the governor of Borno State, and there were, beats and bites of disconnect between them when the Chibok thing happened. I see that the speaker, very quickly before we move on to the next story, I see that the speaker of the Oyo State House of Assembly has also been talking lately. That's Debo Ogundoyin. And part of what he has revealed, which we have not heard from the governor of Oyo State, which we have not heard from any other source, is the fact that there is communication with the abductors, and that about $1 billion, naira has been demanded. There are about requests regarding laws of Oyo State to be tweaked to favor certain interests, and the fact that the money that was being demanded should be paid to a particular account in Benin Republic. That's an interesting angle to what has happened, and I think that that's not what we should be hearing from the Speaker of Oyo State House of Assembly, even if it is true. Was it deliberate that information was released through him, or was it being careless? Because this is something that is still being investigated. If Benin Republic is involved, I think that it should make it easier for the president or for the federal government to deal with. Because I remember during Obasanjo, perhaps in his first term or second term, there was a well-known kidnapper and a local terrorist that was residing in Benin Republic, but terrorizing Nigerians, kidnapping people.
You know, very importantly, on this topic of Benin Republic, because I've been watching the videos coming out recently from Benin Republic of them celebrating Nigerian soldiers who are able to rout terrorists there.
Yeah.
Because importantly, it's not about just necessarily them coming from Benin Republic, it's also that terrorists that originated from Nigeria moved into Benin Republic.
Yeah.
And so it's and we're seeing JAS move down from the northwest where they're being routed, and they're being routed by our military, our army, rather, our air force. Very importantly, so to the fact that ISWAP has actually sent out a message to their international collaborators saying it's too dangerous for the terrorists to come into Nigeria. But we've now seen JAS and ISWAP and these groups move towards other countries from Nigeria, such as Benin Republic, which is why we were able to send our military there. So I don't know if we would say if Benin Republic is involved, or if Nigerian terrorists have expanded their area of operation beyond our borders, which is true. Cross-border terror is really on the rise in our region.
Which is precisely my point.
Yes.
That if there is a Benin Republic connection to all this, in my opinion, it should make it a lot easier for the federal government to deal with, given the relationship that we have with Benin Republic. And it has happened before, as I was trying to say the other time, that Obasanjo simply said that hand that, gentleman, a kidnapper over. And in less than 48 hours, it was done. And he spent, a good chunk of jail time, I believe in Nigeria before he was released back to Benin Republic to serve the rest of his jail time. So it can be done. So if somebody is demanding ₦1 billion and it says pay into an account in Benin Republic, that's a lead for the security agencies to work with. And Benin Republic is not in space, So, but the point that I was trying to make is that how come we're hearing that from the Speaker of the Oyo State House of Assembly, and not from the NSA, and not from the Oyo State Governor, and not from the Homeland Security Special Advisor that we have not seen or heard a word from. So there are a number of things that they will need to work on. Too many loopholes that, are not helping the situation. And of course, there are people who are stealing money, who are waiting desperately for their wards to return home.
Absolutely.
We hope that they do.
Absolutely, Steve. It's just, I find it really, really interesting because, I've been doing the morning show for a couple of years since I joined Arise, right? And I vividly remember having this same conversation a couple of years ago around state policing, around the decision to safeguard the people versus dilly-dallying around it. Yeah. So I think it's awful. It's disheartening, to say the least, that we are almost trying to advise how this should happen, whereas we all know that this should not be rocket science. Even the explanation that you just gave speaks to that. It's not rocket science. So I think the big question is, why not? Why hasn't anything been done? Or why isn't anything be done? Anything that is not surface, let me put it that way. But I guess we'll wait and see.